Okay, we're going to try to move on to remote lesson number 2. So we're going to look at a couple things today to help you with your IWAs. First thing we're going to do is review the use of the stimulus one more time, because you know it's got me stressed out. I want to make sure everyone does that right. I'm going to review rubric rows 3 through 7 quickly so everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do to get the perfect score. We're going to go over the IWA template one more time. All right, so I know you've seen this before. We talked about this in class. There are central themes that connect most of the articles, but there could be a narrower theme that has very specific connection between just 2 of the articles. The student does not necessarily have to mention both articles in the paper as long as the theme is clearly connected, although you should to be safe. Like we talked about yesterday in remote lesson 1. You should use 2 stimulus as a theme, a thematic connection in the introduction and context part of your paper. Then take one of those sources and use it in the body paragraphs in your argument. All right? If you do that, and you do it the way we talked about yesterday with essential use, you should be good with the rows 1 and 2. This underlined passage is important because we want to make sure that everyone understands when we talk about essential use. The rubric asks a student to incorporate one of the stimulus articles as an integral element of the argument, like we talked about yesterday, essential. This means that one of the articles is integral to the argument as either context or evidence in the line of reasoning. Integral means that the removal of the reference to the stimulus article fundamentally weakens the essay. That means that a passing mention of the article in a tangential or superficial way will not meet the criteria on the rubric. Please make sure that you're taking care of that part of the rubric. All right. Now, let's move on to rubric row number 3. Rubric row 3 is understand and analyze perspective. So to get the perfect score, it says the response evaluates multiple perspectives and synthesizes them by drawing relevant connections between them, considering objections, implications, and limitations. Multiple perspectives, points of view. So if you were going to do whether or not school should be open later in the day, all right? Maybe you'd look at student points of view, teachers, administrators, school districts, political officials. Those are the types of perspectives, right? If you were going to look at whether or not schools should have been closed as a result of the coronavirus, you could look at doctors, the CDC, political officials, school officials, parents, teachers, students, all right? So those are multiple perspectives. Make sure you're looking at different perspectives, not just one, and making your argument from those perspectives. These perspectives either enhance or confirm your own argument or conflict with your argument, right? Because you have to have that counter argument in there. So make sure that it elaborates on the connections among different perspectives and uses details from different sources or perspectives to demonstrate a specific agreement or disagreement among the perspectives, right? So that's what we're trying to do. You are making an argument, this one. It is not a report. You are arguing your own perspective using the research that you've done, all right? Good. So let's move on to rubric row 4. Establishing argument. As you can see, this is worth a lot of points, 12 points here. The response is a clear and convincing argument. The response is logically organized and well-reasoned by connecting claims and evidence, leading to a plausible, well-aligned conclusion. All right? Organization is often signposted or explicit. When we talk about signposting, we're talking about subtitles. So if you can, subtitle sections of your paper to follow your argument. The commentary explains fully how evidence supports claims. Remember, every time you make a claim, you have to have your reasoning and your evidence. And remember, reasoning and evidence can be flipped. Sometimes you present the evidence first and then your reasoning, or your reasoning first and then the evidence. The commentary will engage with the content of the evidence to draw conclusions. The solution conclusion is fully aligned with the research question. We talked about that yesterday. Make sure that at the very end of your paper, when you read the whole paper, that your question and your conclusion are tied together closely. If not, change your question. All right. It's an organized argument. It's well-reasoned. The claims are connected to the evidence. And you're going to use that template, which we'll talk about at the end of this lesson, but also it is loaded onto Schoology, so you can take a look at it in case you left it at school. So here is the template. I know we've seen it before. Again, it's loaded on Schoology, so you can take a look at it later on. Just make sure that you're following along with this. And if you have questions, again, you know how to get in touch with me. And then the second part of the template is here. All right? Good. Number 5, rubric row 5. To get the 9 points, the response includes relevant, credible, and sufficient evidence to support its argument. Does the response select relevant evidence from credible sources? Ask, is it an appropriate authoritative source for that particular claim? Is the evidence selected sufficient to support the argument? So 2 things. You have to have credible, relevant evidence. Meaning you have to use EBSCO. You have to use databases. You have to use the virtual reference collection. If you use popular literature or popular periodicals, you have to use ones that have credibility and reliability attached to them. The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes magazine. Don't use blog sites unless you've done a thorough search to make sure that they're credible and reliable. If you're using a written source, make sure you use Raven, right? Make sure you're not using something that is not a credible, reliable source. Makes purposeful use of relevant evidence from a variety of scholarly work. We'll do a lesson on purposeful use. Remember, you're going to have to use at least 3 academic sources. The response effectively connects evidence to the argument. There is purposeful analysis and evaluation of the evidence, and the selected evidence fully supports the claims. When we talk about sufficient, do you have enough? All right. Now, the number isn't significant as long as you feel like you have enough sources that engage in enough perspectives. That's what they mean by sufficient. All right. Number 6, the citations. All right. Consistent citation format. Use Noodle Tools, please. All right. Noodle Tools is going to be consistent, and that makes it a lot easier on yourself. You must match the bibliographic citations with those in the paper and vice versa, just like we talked about with the IRR. All right. If it's in the paper, it has to be in the bibliography. If it's in the bibliography, it has to be in the paper. Make sure you check and double check that time and time again. Okay. We don't want losing 5 points because you didn't do enough proofreading and checking. Remember, I loaded up some student examples from the 2017 exam, so you can take a look at those citations if you're having trouble figuring that out. And also, PurdueOwl.com is a service that shows you how to use the different citation styles if you're going to use MLA or something else. Hopefully using MLA. All right, last one is apply conventions. The response creates variety, emphasis, and interest to the reader through the use of effective sentences and precision of word choice. The written style is consistent, appropriate for an academic audience. Although the response may have a few errors, it's okay if you do. You get 3 points for that. So, like we've talked about a bunch of times already, you're writing conversationally, but you're writing for an educated audience, an academic audience. You're not writing for your friends. You're writing for somebody who has an interest in your topic in an educational sense. So watch out for slang. Do not use contractions. Avoid the rhetorical questions. Avoid vague quantities like many and countless. Avoid words like always, never, very, extremely, literally, and highly. All right? Avoid those types of words. Look for them. Get them out of there. Make sure you've done that right. Clean up your paper. All right? Make sure it looks good. Proofread, proofread, proofread over and over and over again. Get one of your classmates to proofread it. All right? You might miss it, and you might miss a mistake. We want to make sure that everyone is checking over each other's work to make sure that you get the best work possible. Make sure you clearly communicate. If someone's reading your paper and they don't understand, reword it. Make sure they can understand it. Proofread, proofread, proofread. All right. We're done for today. If you need to get in touch with me, you can do so at any time, through the Remind, through email. Hopefully you have some questions that I can answer.